And we're live. Oh, Jesus Christ. Welcome to the first live stream. Alright, so I'm going to stall for time. Hopefully some more people are going to be joining. I don't know about anyone watching this vid on the replay or in the chat right now. I hope I can get a confirmation that I'm live. But Twitter, how about stalling for time with Twitter for a moment? Because Elon Musk just rolled out these rate limitations. I was hoping that I could, get a nice, healthy amount of engagement so people could hear about this, because this is my first book club wrap-up live stream, right? And then he puts in these rules that if you're not verified, I think currently you can see 600 posts a day. And everyone is just ranting about it right now, eating up all of their posts in the day, complaining about not getting posts in the day. Isn't that just fantastic? So I see Tony Capone Comics and A.S. Brunner are in the chat. I hope everything is coming through, that you can confirm I didn't completely scuff this. Good morning. And a Sterilus? Alright. So, unfortunately, it is just me today. Like I said, I just now learned how to live stream and such. This is my first time doing it on the channel, so I don't have like Streamlabs or StreamYard set up. This is just me with the webcam, pretty much. Next month, I'm hoping to have hopefully a panel of independent authors or comic creators or someone with projects that they can shill, and it won't just be me going, hey guys, buy my book, please. You know what I mean? But today it's just me. I'm going to share some thoughts, do some breakdown, hopefully engage with the chat about the first book that I chose for the book club I'm doing on this channel, which is, of course, Foundation by Isaac Asimov. That is actually the sequel. I picked this up the other day at an antique store in my town. Completely unplanned. I was just walking by to pick up some records from the store like next door, and I noticed they had a brand new science fiction setup. Went in there and I was like, ooh, $3 physical prop, because personally I've read Foundation as an audiobook on my phone, and I can't show that on screen, right? That doesn't make sense. So I'm hoping that I believe Sterilus read Foundation this month. Tony AS did either review. This is meant to be a discussion forum. I'm not going to just rant, or I would have made a recording about it, because I definitely could just rant about it. Unfortunately, I have to get used to the delay between OBS and getting it out to YouTube. So I'm watching the streaming tab, and I have a tab open of what's actually coming through to U3. A little weird. It's cool, though. So, as an overview for anyone tuning in, Foundation is arguably Asimov's most famous book, and it's a trilogy. It is one of I think it's literally the first book that takes place at a galactic scale. This was from, I want to say, the 40s or something. Let's see. 60s. Okay, close enough. And the premise is that mankind has spread out across the galaxy and has built this massive empire that is currently collapsing under its own weight of centralized bureaucracy and warring factions of nobility. The pressures of economy and governance and danger and turmoil are slowly tearing apart the galactic empire, even though it is this massive boon to everyone living in it. And that's bad. And that is where super genius Harry Seldon comes in, because he has invented this new branch of mathematics called psychohistory. And he can use mathematics, pure rigorous logic and symbology, to prove that not only is the galactic empire going to collapse, but the humans are going to go through, I think, 20,000 years of turmoil and barbarism and savagery, unless this big brain genius scientist manages to engineer otherwise. And that is the premise of the story, is he creates this little enclave of scientists out on the fringe of the galaxy on a worthless planet called Terminus. And he sets it all up in the right spot at the right time with the right people, with the right everything, that instead of 20,000 years of savagery, it's like 1,000 if they're lucky. They have to go through these crises where the people alive at the time have to adapt, survive, overcome, and expand their influence from one worthless scientific outpost to being the new galactic empire. That's the premise of the trilogy. It sounds great. There's a lot to be said good for it. There's a lot that you can give it leniency for, because, this is a book that's like 60 years old. I see Evelyn Music is here. Welcome to the chat. I personally didn't really care for Foundation. In some respects, it really simplifies things, but you kind of have to simplify this kind of story if you ever plan on talking about it at all. But I think it simplifies too much, and it's too clearly this weird discussion of how the fall of Rome probably could have gone differently is typically what gets studied by these people that talk about historical cycles and the inevitability of paradigm shifts and so on. I want to talk about psychohistory first, though. There is a character whose name escapes me right now, because when I don't read the pages in front of me, I can kind of struggle to remember the names. I usually have to look it up, but whatever. Later in the series, there's one of the successors to the Foundation wanted to study psychohistory after super wizard Harry Seldon set everything up. But one of the precepts of this mathematical idea of psychohistory is that the people being studied aren't allowed to know the results, even though Harry tells them the results, that they'll be the new galactic empire in 1,000 years. Whoops. They can't have psychohistory themselves, because then you get into this recursive iteration where they just keep recalculating, and then people on the other side will start recalculating how to change and compensate for that, and you get into this bottomless mess of predictions and counter predictions, and it stops working. But even in the book, Asimov says that the next closest thing to psychohistory, he actually gets a little sloppy with terms, and maybe that's because it's in the 60s, because, thank you, Hardin, he actually starts calling, instead of psychohistory, psychology, which I think the implication there is that psychohistory is an application of psychology, just with, at mathematical scale. But Hardin says, well, I couldn't do that, so I went into politics. Which kind of brings up the fact that it's ridiculous to think that you can remove the knowledge of psychology to an extent that the math works over a long enough period of time. I'm going to make this claim about not only humans, not only human organizations, but also artificial intelligences. This is the crux of all thought. Almost always comes down to trying to predict the future. Oh, right, because there was a big delay between the first and second book. So the first Foundation book was 1951. Thank you very much. But all human thought is trying to predict the future to varying degrees of certainty and accuracy and knowing what other people are going to do and so on. All of human planning, the economy, the ability to say, oh, I want to build, a yacht that is going to require me to have XYZ parts shipped from these plants around the world that they're going to arrive on this time, and that I can sequence them in and build it. Relies on predicting the future. It relies on expecting people to hold up their end of the bargain and so on. Politics is entirely driven by, I think the Russian military offensive is going to do this. It's going to succeed like that. So we're going to provide X, Y, and Z resources to these combatants, and so on and so on and so on. All thought is about predicting the future. Harry Seldon just magically gets this mathematical version that he acts like, you can't be certain. It's just a probability distribution. But when he can plan for every distribution, for every possibility, and make all of them lead to the same result, it's just kind of comes across to me like magic. And it refutes the idea that like he assumes that over the course of thousands of years, no one can, starting from politics, rederive psychohistory. Is just this like gaping hole in the logic of this series. I know in book 2, I believe, the one I actually have, there is a character that starts destroying the entire concept, like the models, because he starts getting into how it works. And what is it? He's called like the Mule or something. I haven't read the second book in like 6 years. I didn't reread it for this one. Maybe I should have. But the predictions start falling apart later because people start interacting with the predictions, which I've heard a lot of people say that's what gives the trilogy this feel that he's retconning and trying to correct the stupid things he started earlier in the series. Like, the third one, I think, is the second foundation, where there's the Shadow Foundation working from the background to make sure that they stay on track for the Selden crises and so on. Because the idea that you can predict even reasonably accurately when certain conditions will be met, without interference, without people making sure that happens. That this was something that people thought like 100 years ago, and then you study it a bit more rigorously, and you look at things and you say, oh, well, this was on this trajectory until this anomalous event like the Black Plague happened and completely changed all these things and rewrote progress non-linearly and so on. And without the secret people in the background making it happen, it's a little ridiculous, I think. That said, it is still an interesting book. It is an early prototypical attempt at massive politics and how to portray them and how to bring in elements of how the economy, loyalty, military power, religion, and so on, all these things that play into how people are in charge, why populations work with their governments and so on. And the way that it can evolve and change and trickery and so on, and the way that different groups can be played against each other, that was all done pretty well, I would say. What is this, Undead? Why are you trying to summon a Kraken? You got me. Come on. And I think you might all be seeing firsthand why my videos are so short. So I'm covering not just one book, but 3 books right now. I've only been live for 13 minutes. Anyways, side note to all this, it's always so quaint to go back to an old science fiction book and see the technology they just didn't bother to consider. Because, like, there's no computers. They just didn't imagine that computational machines would reach the level of importance that they clearly have. Because in the 50s and 60s, it was all about atomic power, which gives it a lot of that retro feel, because it's still just, like, that's why you need pilots, because there aren't computers. There's hacking isn't a concern, artificial intelligence isn't a concern, bioengineering of humans doesn't exist in this setting, no one has life extension, everyone still dies in like their 70s, but you can travel between planets in like a span of a week. It's like sailing ships between continents, basically. It's quaint. It's kind of nice to go back and see, but like they don't even have personal computers, if you notice. I think they have microfilm projectors to build the encyclopedia and to view the various parts that they're printing, which, for anyone tuning in who hasn't read the book, the premise of how Harry Selden got all the scientists to the special planet is that they were working on publishing basically Wikipedia, which I think is a hilarious parallel here, is to look at the Encyclopedia Galactica, or whatever he calls it, compared to what we have today with Wikipedia of, we're going to sequester 100,000 experts and casual workers to catalog all human knowledge forever and make it available to everyone. And he still thought they had to print editions and distribute them on paper. Pretty quaint, I think. A little ridiculous, but that's the thing about hindsight. So, let's get into something a bit more, maybe let's say controversial, I think, because so far everything I've gone over, I think most people will agree that the premise of psychohistory is a little ridiculous, and he seems to always contradict himself. It's really obvious on Trantor when they're getting predictions that correct to like which bus the new scientist will be on at what time doing what, and how much time they have before they get arrested, and how to negotiate, and like the exact sentences that have to be said in order to get the political opinion they need. And then he goes, but it only works on large populations of people. You can't apply psychohistory to a single individual because people can always surprise you. Then he does it to like everyone around him. There's also the problem of when you're making these kinds of predictions, you have to assume that the people you're... this is an application of game theory in a lot of ways, where you have to assume that the other people playing the politics are playing correctly, or are at a scale where their random mistakes can be accounted for. Because really, at any point, any of the Selden crises that happen could be completely ruined by someone being stupid. Like, every time they get into a military three-way standoff, someone could just launch a war that they lose. You can see that Asimov has this immense disdain for non-intellectuals. This idea that the barbarous politicians are idiots and incompetent, and they don't respect knowledge or anything, and that's why they can be so easily manipulated by the big brain scientists he has. And yet they still act exactly the way the calculations say they'll act, with, oh, well, our calculations say there is a 98% probability that you will still be on course to save the Galactic Empire. Do I hold that against Asimov? I don't know, but it really stretches the plausibility for me. Maybe that's just because I'm sitting here in 2023. Where was I going before that? Game theory, Harry Selden, I'm rambling, I'm missing points. That's fantastic. Love to see it live. This is something I could edit out, but hey, not doing that, I guess. So, overall, I'm going to say that out of 10, I'm going to give Foundation like a 7 out of 10 because I appreciate it for its historical significance. I'll say that. You know what? That is a good take, Starless. Asimov having the big brain ideas, but not the creative skill to execute them well. That's probably true. That might well be true. But I have strong opinions about what is creativity, and because what you really need to build on what other people do as examples and explorations of how to do things and what to mix up. And when he's like the first person to write something like this, that's a huge hurdle to clear, to do the first iteration of something. Kind of like George Lucas. How do I feel about George Lucas? He had a lot of weird ideas, and then got told better ideas, and then they took it away from him and made even worse ideas. So it's hard for me to say whether the ideas were good or bad. Because a lot of the quality of Star Wars evolved because of other writers they did for the extended universe, as well as the political reshaping and explanations that the prequels gave. Which I believe he had a significantly different relationship with his producers and his staff for the prequels than he did for the original trilogy. The original trilogy really does not have much going on in it. It's a very simple story, and arguably that's why it was good, because he didn't overreach his capabilities, both as a writer and financially, basically. Yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. It was an ideas guy with bad execution. Going back to Asimov, though, you can tell that Asimov is a very smart guy. He can actually write intelligent people. He just has this haughtiness and disdain for less intelligent people at times that kind of seeps into his writing. Maybe that's because he was pretty young when this first book came out. Oh, I remember it. the idea of cycles, of civilizational cycles, and these phases and these evolutions was not invented by Asimov. Asimov was exploring them through this world of science fiction, which used to be how sci-fi was written. I have this idea. I am going to use science fiction to construct a narrative framework that can explore the idea explicitly and in a scale that doesn't get bogged down with like minor details. So if you say that like the fall of Rome was inevitable because they created an economic system that requires constant expansion of plantation colonies, which drove down the price of labor, which led to people needing to be in Rome on the dole, which required more taxes, which required more plantations, and then they expanded beyond what they could manage, and then they fell in. They could no longer keep their borders safe, and people came in and raided them. If you say that about history, someone will always have this like quibbling argument, this other interpretation of, well, actually, it was because they devalued the denarii. It's because they started cutting the silver content out of it. Actually, it's because the sun started cooling. Don't you know they had the solar cycle? It starts with an M, some Russian name. Solar cycle, where it was on average 10 degrees warmer for hundreds of years, and then started to cool right at the decline because that reduced the crop yields. It wasn't the management. Whatever. People will argue about actual history because everyone has their own interpretations. But if you're a science fiction author, you get to narrow it down to like a almost scientific lens of what is being examined, and does this play out like this, and why? Is this how you want to think about things? And what one of the problems though is Asimov just postulates that this hyper materialistic, hyper urbanized end state of civilization is the correct time to be alive. The entire activity of the Foundation is not to prevent the cycle. It's not to stop the cycle. It is to redistribute the time between the different phases to put as much time as possible in the final stage before the fall. Now, he starts work at the end of the Galactic Empire, so his goal is to get back to that stage as fast as possible. That's the premise, that having trillions of people crammed in a hive city planet where they don't even see the sky anymore is a desirable end state. I don't think it is. I think his disdain for the more direct, more personal relationships between government and civilian is politically cheating, I could say. And by the way, Asteros, believe it or not, I don't think I've ever read something by Arthur C. Clarke. I might choose that something soon for the book club by Arthur C. Clarke, just for my own education. But I do have the next two picked out already. Books that I think will be quite enjoyed. And will be shorter than Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. What do you think, chat? Am I crazy? Am I in left field? Or do you agree with me? Do you think I have a point that as Isaac Asimov may be a little politically blinded, politically motivated in the construction of this trilogy? '80s being the end state. I don't know. The '90s were a really good time. Things get really muddy when talking about civilizational cycles because of technology. Technology can control the quality of life to an almost unbelievable degree. And in the '90s, we had this developed state of sea shipping. So, such that global economies suddenly started working. There wasn't piracy. There wasn't missed shipments, really, that everyone could trade with everyone because of America controlling the oceans. And on top of that, corporations and private citizens began getting the internet. And we had, like, before the dot-com bubble burst, when everyone was just like, oh my god, we have this brand new data sharing technology. We can cut so much overhead costs. We can lower our costs so much to function that we're having this runaway prosperity that was genuinely going down to the working class person. We definitely are in decline, though, right now. Just about every author between World War II and the 90s was politically motivated. You know, that's an interesting thing. I wonder if you go before World War II, would people still think that writers were politically motivated? Because if you go back into the 19th century, you can see that most everyone was writing with a Christian lens, which is arguably a political motivation at times, you could say, because we've had atheism and paganism forever. But during the Cold War, in the post-war period, and until everything started kind of going wrong, it does seem like everything that got popular had to do with concerns about communism, with concerns about the growth of technology. Not so much a fear of our government, though. That probably changed in the 90s and through into the 2000s, where we have been evolving through that little paradigm shift. Yeah, you know what? I think Hollywood specifically, can be said, was in a golden era where they were just making entertainment, where they managed to extract most of the political messaging. I think you make a good point there, Sprinter. At the turn of the century, the average American is all about imperialism. It wasn't until World War I that mindsets changed. We were pretty tied up in our own hemisphere, though. You sure that's American writers and not European writers at the time? That being Andy as fuck. Alright. That said, though, I do want to recap that overall, I chose Foundation for this book club because it is an easy read. This isn't like it's not a difficult book to consume. I've definitely read some dry things. The Foundation is not dry. It's just a little weird and clunky, and it jumps between characters so much that it's hard to get attached to people, and relies on basically magic. So that gives a lot to talk about, and a lot of reference material that a smart writer can extract to do better than Asimov did. And it gives content to talk about. Hopefully, next month with Catch-22, the exact same thing is going to happen. Though I said in the announcement vid, I have not read Catch-22 myself. It's been on my to-read list for a very long time. Because it gets labeled as like the most important book of the 20th century because it's just such a compelling satirization of the state of war and stuff. Hopefully that'll be great. Next month, I do want to have other live people to talk with rather than me just trying to talk with chat with like a 30-second delay between what I'm saying and what's actually arriving to you all. Yeah. So, at this point, we're at the half-hour mark, which is about how much time I thought I would budget for discussing the book itself. As said, this is my inaugural live stream. I do want to open the table for basically Ask Me Anything for a bit. If anyone wants to chat me up about what I'm planning to do with future book clubs, with future videos, with what my to-read list is, how I feel about the Iron Age, what books I'm going to be releasing, why do my streaming assets suck and not exist? Why don't I have music to play like all the other cool YouTubers? As I remember reading Westmark by Lloyd Alexander. This one character just went on a rant about how a stand-in for communism is bad, though I do think that Westmark was meant to be a political allegory. Do I need to start reading books like Atlas Shrugged, like explicitly political books that came out in the last century? Do I need to do that? Emily, no, I do not take notes on all the books I read, although I do think it is helping me lately when I started doing videos on them. Because it forces me to think about, like, so what is interesting out of what I just read? For example, just today I finished Konosuba Volume 10, and I had to ask myself, how can I make an interesting video out of this? Because I did spend several days reading it and enjoying it. And for the record, Konosuba is really good, if you like that kind of thing. But because it's like Volume 10, I can't just make a video about Volume 10 in a series if I haven't gone from the beginning. That would be a little weird. I don't think that would engage people. However, I figure that I can make a pretty good video talking about the lie detecting bell and how it gets satirized and subverted and just destroyed by well-intentioned idiocy, which is just fantastic because it seems like an obvious magic that a fantasy world would have is the ability to detect lies. And in a more serious forum, people might try and treat that as like legit. But because Konosuba is a comedy, it just fails at every turn, and it's beautifully done in my opinion. Well done, well thought up. Pauses happen. Consider editing is after the fact. You can add production value, intro, outro music. It could work, and yes, help because they can keep talking. Yes, I do need other independent authors and comic book creators and so on to come on here so they can give some ideas and give some rebuttal and argument live. And also because I am doing this for engagement, to help spread good literature, to build community, to build a platform, and because I do need to get some book sales. And I want to help that with other people because there's a big community on YouTube of, oh, let me just interview you, you can talk about your project. But personally, when I'm on YouTube, if I just see like, oh, I'm interviewing random Joe Schmo author, I have 20 books on my shelf upstairs to read. I really don't need to be sold some other book. I already have a pile I'm trying to buy, so I don't usually click on those. But this kind of discussion, this kind of engagement, the idea is you get to know the author and the guests and so on. They're talking about something that they can argue about without like demeaning each other's work, I think is a big critical thing. So that's where I'm hoping this book club goes in the future. What is the most fun books they've ever read and what made it fun? Most fun book. So I already shouted out Konosuba heavily. So instead, I'm going to actually say that the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. I know that's going to be a really common answer, but it's because they're really, really good if you are down with British style humor, like old school British style humor. The way that jokes get set up, executed, and then re-executed better later in the book is just so good. And it does rely on like the very obvious maxim for how to write comedy is, well, if you want to write something funny, write about funny people. And that's why you get like a human raised by dwarves and a obnoxious drunk Scottish gnome who's only 2 inches tall, and then sentient golems, and this wild cast of characters that have these bizarre magical impacts, which I tried to take direct inspiration for that when I was writing my funny book, Infinite Money Glitch, back there. That's one of the reasons I set Infinite Money Glitch in a video game world, is because I saw firsthand how much quality you get from having ridiculous premises to work with. And I was just like, well, I don't want to just copy Discworld. What can I bring to the table? So I brought in all of my video game obsession knowledge and blended that in. And I think it turned out pretty good. Maybe it could have been better. There's some confusion about how the heist actually executes at the end. And that's me need to be a better author as time goes on. But that was how I decided to be funny. It's because I'm so impressed by the late Sir Terry Pratchett's work in Discworld. I think Small Gods by him is one of the best books I've ever read in my life. Highly recommend Small Gods. Yes, funny situations in video games and all that does free up the rules, because that can really screw up more serious. Like if you try and pull a Hollywood and as regular people in a regular situation, you can end up with like sitcom humor, and people are super already exposed to sitcom humor, so it can be harder to get a reaction because there isn't that novelty aspect to it. And also, if you are doing it in a book, you can't force in a laugh track to trick people. And the jokes start having to stand on their own, and they stop working so well. That's why if you look at like the best comedy movies that you can remember, let's use the Hangover as an example. That should be a very mundane setup because it's four guys go on a bachelor party and then they lose the groom. But, it's set in Vegas, and it's set with, the premise is that they can't remember what happened because of drugs and so on. And they just bring in more and more ridiculous interactions of what happened that they're trying to piece together in this mystery setup where all the mess is happening because they're kind of not intelligent. By the way, if you want to be funny, making the characters stupider helps a lot. But yeah. Good to hear, Evely. My book's making you laugh. I do think humor is one of the best things for an author to work on because it is such a genuine and obvious benchmark to quality because you can't really fake it. You can get someone to talk up. Oh my god, I just love the way that intelligent characters are portrayed in Foundation, that this triumph of science is going on to help people. The scale was incredible. I just loved, I've never seen this before, that a story took place at the scale of a galaxy. Can you imagine that? And you can just have a very disingenuous conversation about it where you can pretend that you enjoyed it intellectually. You're just lying if you say that a book was funny and it didn't make you laugh. That's one of the big appeals of the comedy genre. It also works with romance, where if you read a romance and you're not like practically in love with one of the characters, the romance failed, and you just know that it worked. There's no debating the quality there. It failed. Personality, starting book today. Always be down for funny books. I'm with you right there, man. Unfortunately, if you look at my to-read pile, I have a lot of nonfiction study material in my pile. I break it up with divergences to like Konosuba and Grimgar and picking up Terry Pratchett books and stuff and dabbling in lit RPG nonsense. I need to break it up, even though I definitely get more out of reading nonfiction than reading whatever random humor setup I come across. I like the variety. What can I say? Good to hear about Catch-22. I have started it before, and the premise is funny. It does set things up. It does make you question what's going on and stuff. Andy, what do you mean you invested all your stats into pain? How many hours a week does everyone in here read? How do you read by hour? How do you measure reading by hours? Kahuna, not the manga. I am not reading the manga to Konosuba. I'm reading the original, or not even the original. It was originally a web novel, but I'm reading the light novels of it because the anime wasn't coming out fast enough, so I wanted to get ahead. So we are getting another season. That's gonna be fantastic. By the way, if any of you need anime recommendations, the spin-off novel, Konosuba, An Explosion on This World, about Megumin's backstory was amazing. I loved it. I look forward to that every week. By the way, so I'm currently reading some digital culture books on Audible. It is currently Here Comes Everybody by... what's his name? Clay sure something. I don't know. It's not that good, but I'm trying to study these analysis from like the people who helped create the internet and social media. I'm trying to see what they have to say about the impact of the internet on humans, so I can bring that to the table in my cyberpunk books. I'm going to wrap that up, hopefully, over the extended weekend and get into Catch-22, because that is a 20-hour audiobook that I need to have done in time for me to read a supplementary book before the next live stream. For Foundation here, I actually read Man and Technics by Oswald Spengler. I didn't get much from it, to be honest. I may still need to read Decline of the West, but it's probably not a project I'll do anytime soon. So As for my paperback reading, though, I every single day I read 50 pages. And that gets me through books pretty steadily and at a rate that works with me getting 3 videos a week out. I get somewhere between 20 and 30 listening hours in. So 20 to 30 listening hours in. Holy crap, man. How? Do you have like a 4-hour commute every day? More likely to clear a day and binge read. Now, I don't know how to do that anymore. I would just get mentally tired. Like, unless it's an easy book to read, like Konosuba, where I have a big-ass grin on my face the entire time, I don't think I could sit for more than 2 to 3 hours in one sitting. I believe that is such a myth. You do not need to speed up your reading. You need to be enjoying your time as you're reading. Don't feel pressured to read more books or something. As long as you're reading the 1 book a month that I assign as homework so you can join these conversations. Beyond that, you don't need to read anymore. Because the point is that you need to consume, comprehend, and remember what you read. When I was in like high school and middle school, I was at a point of like reading a book every day at some points. I was reading these like really short YA stuff. And now, 15 years later, I don't even remember the books that I read. I could not tell you their titles anymore. I could go digging in my parents' garage to find them and go, well, I guess I read this, but I don't remember them. Because I was reading too fast. I was reading too many. I wasn't thinking about them. I was just consuming. And I don't recommend that. That's one of the reasons I wanted to start this channel, was to force me to make videos to talk about what I enjoyed or what was bad in the books. And that does help you learn what you're reading, learn from it, grow, compare to other things. And it is, in my opinion, a better experience to take more time with a book. Like, you don't... the Goodreads annual goal of how many books in 2023 do you want to complete is such a scam, because the people who set high numbers on that are reading like short stories to get there, and they're speed reading, and they're living a completely different life, where they probably have more time in the day. They're probably working like part-time jobs sometimes, or they're YouTubers, and that's how they're getting to like 200 books in a year. Some books need more time. Give the books that the time that they need. Public school trying to force you to read fast is really bad for learning and mental health. Avoid the amount of time and books you need to read. Probably for Way of the House Husband. My brother has been trying to get me to watch Way of the House Husband for so long now. I accidentally turned him into such a weeb a couple years ago, where I introduced him to anime, and I got him hooked, and he now watches like 4 times more than I do, and it's scary. Am I talking too fast, Michael Kudla? Human memory sucks in general. Comprehension forms more solid conclusions to pull ideas off in the future. I love that show. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with my rate of about 1.5 books a week. And I think you've seen in my video uploads, I'm supplementing with like current events and artificial intelligence and the whatever is blowing up on Twitter and stuff, to give some variety to the content. So that, because if I try to push myself to read faster, that'll end up with reading shorter books. Like Perdido Street Station, if you all watched my review of that, I didn't have that much to say in the review because I had already pulled out subjects from it to make videos, because it was a 700-page book that really should have been about 400 pages. And it took me like 2.5 weeks to get through that, because it needed to, because there were just so many novel ideas crammed into it. And I had to keep trying to assess, like, is this a good idea? Should this be in here? What's being gained? What's being set up? And very often, like with the cactus people, the answer was nothing. This is worthless. This is stupid. This should not have been in the book. The pacing is just completely screwed up by this. I don't like this. But I didn't want that to be a knee-jerk complaint. So, my fellow stoner, hey, this is a non-marijuana channel. Do I need to declare that now? You will not be able to remember a book if you read it high. In McCaffrey's Dragon Rider series. Alright, so we're at 45 minutes here. And I know that most people here are planning to tune into a certain live stream from a certain channel. It's going live in now 14 minutes. I did say that I was planning to wrap this up before then, so there wouldn't be an overlap. This has been my inaugural live stream. If you have last-minute questions, jam them in. Otherwise, what I would like to invite you all to do, if you have not already done it, is join my Gilded server. Gilded, if you don't know, is a Discord clone that I prefer it because it doesn't have scammers yet, because it's smaller. But if you're building a community on it, it's not like you're. It being smaller doesn't matter because I'm the one bringing the people there, so it's fine. You're not going to be getting, as far as I'm aware, like random people messaging you trying to sell you crypto or anything. There aren't going to be huge scandals of someone screenshotted some naughty words in it and then got the entire server purged or something. So let me see. This should just work. I should be able to just copy paste that in. That is the invite to my server where everyone over the course of the month is able to talk about the book club and other things that I'm trying to get some film stuff going on, some exercise and fitness, my ability to shill my stuff. It's beta readers. There's a small community of writers in there now that are trying to help each other. That definitely needs to grow because we are definitely in an age where we need new franchises, new IPs, new creators. So maybe I can be part of that change and I can help get some other people going in their endeavors. Because there is nothing more soul-crushing than getting convinced to throw yourself out there, and then the harsh reality of the market says, nobody wants to buy this book. Congratulations, you got 5 sales and no reviews. I imagine that would just crush a new writer, which is why a lot of people are hesitant to get out there. So if people can get confident that they are going to launch well and have a good product and they have something that people will actually enjoy consuming, that's the way forward. So for in the future, my plan is Saturdays. This got scuffed because I forgot to apply for the 24-hour advance heads up for the live stream application. I do mean to do this as the first Saturday of the next month. Not on Sundays. This was an anomaly because Google didn't let me live stream yesterday. Till then, thank you all for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please drop a like on the stream so that people can find the replay. Share this around, tell people about it, join the Gilded, subscribe to my channel, buy my books. Cheers. I'm going to try and figure out how to end the stream.